This is part 11 of the roster deep dive series, and in this one I'm going to take a break from describing certain teams because I've described most of the meta teams that you're going to need to care about, and then most of the things coming up next are teams that are more situational, or they're less powerful and less important, or they're new and I don't really have a good grasp on them yet. So in between, I wanted to take a break and discuss something that I see a lot of people making a mistake on, which is not keeping enough flexibility or optionality in the game when they're doing resource management. And what does that mean? Well, a lot of people feel like when they have money they should spend it, or when they have gear they should put it on characters. They just want to do things. They can level the next star, so they just do it right away. And that's not always the right case, especially when you have a resource management game like this. I grew up playing StarCraft and StarCraft 2. And in that game, it's a closed-loop game, so you know exactly what you're going to be spending your money on. But there were times in the game where you're not trying to spend all your money really quickly. Rather, you're going to let it accumulate for a period of time, and you're going to wait for some specific event to happen. And when that event happens, then you know how you're going to spend your money. An example is you're about to attack the enemy force, and then he either beats that attack, and then you need to immediately flood with more defensive units, or you need to flood with more offensive units to try to finish him off, depending on how that attack goes. So in this game, because it's open-ended, you don't know what teams are coming down the pipeline. So it's even more important to have that optionality and be able to spend your resources on a team that you know will be useful and a team that might make other teams less useful. A good example of this is Defenders. When they first came out, they were the second best team in the game next to Fury Shield. After their rework, they were really, really good. At the time, I didn't have Nick Fury because I was really far away on my Kree team, and so I took my Defenders up to tier 11. I put T4s into Iron Fist passive and Punisher, who's not here, his passive, and they have fallen quite a bit now. Like every toon that gets released now feels like they can beat the Defenders. And because of that, I wouldn't recommend taking them to tier 11 anymore. I'd probably leave them at tier 9, maybe tier 10 at most, depending on where I'm at in the game. So as toons come into the game, other toons become less valuable, and because of that, you don't need to put as much resources into them, and you should skimp on doing that to be efficient as possible so you can catch up to the rest of the player base. Spending a bunch of your materials and resources into toons that aren't going to help you get there is not the best way to catch up. That's a really important concept to understand. Spending the minimum effective dosage of materials and stuff to get that team viable and useful for whatever you need to clear until you can get to the next meta toon is the best use of your resources. I mean, that's the way you got to think about the game. I think Fury Shield is going to be one of those teams coming up in the future. It might not be 3 months, it might be 6 months, but sooner rather than later, I believe this team will fall out of favor just like the Defenders. But they're already not the top team in any one game mode. While they're the best team overall today, they're more of a jack of all trades than a master of one. And as more teams come down the line, maybe it's Fantastic Four, plus maybe the AIM rework, plus maybe the Asgardian rework, plus maybe they release something else. This team will slowly get worse and worse and worse. And as it gets worse and worse and worse, you need to put less and less resources in them. Like right now, I think this team is worth putting, getting to at least tier 10, maybe tier 11, level 70, putting the passives in Assault and Nick Fury, just really doing a solid job so they can carry you in a lot of different modes. But 6 months down the line, that may not be the case. So just because I say it in my video doesn't mean that's going to be where it is. You have to understand the context of the game at the time that this video came out. And that brings me to another team, the Brotherhood. So this is what a lot of people are going through right now. The Brotherhood is no longer the Apex Arena team. X-Men has come and completely shifted the arena meta away from the Brotherhood. Unless you have a really high Magneto or Juggernaut, or unless you don't have Phoenix, like I don't have, you're not going to be using Brotherhood as your primary arena core. What does that mean? So if I were to be playing the game now, I would have to see how long do I think I have from getting Magneto until I get Phoenix to see how much I want to put into this team. For someone like me, let's say you just got Magneto now, but you know you're going to get Phoenix in 3 weeks from now. I probably wouldn't put that much into Magneto. I might put him in passive because it allows him to punch up in Alliance War, but I might leave him at 5 stars. I might only bring him to Gear Tier 10. I might not even really level him to 70. I probably eventually would because they're good in Alliance War, but for Arena, not really that useful. In fact, they already punch up really well at 5 stars, so you don't really need to get them that high. For me personally, I'm going to leave them at 6 stars for a really long time. I have no desire to put a lot of work into Magneto's, to get them to 7 stars. Definitely don't want to put Pyro at 7 stars right now because of the way the Alliance Force War is just really bad value on those credits. Eventually I'll probably get Mystique and Sabretooth just by pulling orbs, so I might as well just wait on them. But that being said, let's say you have like a 2-star hand assassin and you can't farm, Loki right now. Then I could see you putting a lot more resources into the Brotherhood because it might be 6 months, it might be 9 months before you're able to get Phoenix. And during that entire time, this is going to be your best arena team. And therefore, you might want to put the extra T4s into, for example, like I did, and I put T4s into Juggernaut's ult. I also put T4s into Pyro's special and ultimate, but maybe you choose to do some of those items because you're going to get a lot of use out of them. Another example for me is Star-Lord. So Star-Lord's special on paper, not the best T4 ability, but I get a lot of use out of it. Ms. Marvel's on paper passive is a much better use of T4s. It's a much better ability in general. There's only 50% chance to blind a third target. And then they could resist it too, which is, crazy. But I use Star-Lord right now, all in my arena. I used him in Fear of the Darkness. I used him in Raids. He's on my Alliance for defense. So he gets a ton of value out of this blind because of just how often I'm able to use it. It's going to eventually pay dividends. And because of that, I don't regret putting the T4 into his blind. It's just not a bad deal for me because I'm getting so much value out of it. So you have to think about the game that way. So while on paper you'll see all these like best T4 abilities to put into best gear, best, what all these things are supposed to do, and those are true, but it's not context dependent, or it's not adding in the context of how often you use the toon in the game. So you need to balance that whenever you're thinking about how I should spend all my materials and resources. Okay, with that being said, I want to wrap this video, and the key thing I want to share with people is save your stuff, man. Being able to save your resources. Like, I might not get Sue Storm in this go-round. Shocker has been increasingly painful. I've been getting about 2 shards a day with 2 refreshes, so I don't, at that pace I won't get her. But let's say I pull some great orbs and I get her. Now I know where I can put my resources to. But if not, I'm saving my resources to maybe save for Phoenix. Or maybe I'll level up a different team. Or maybe something else will announce and I'll want to save my resources for that. So this idea of chunk leveling, like going from 60 to 65, or doing one whole gear tier of gear all at once, is really useful, and I think people should do more of. My biggest mistake I did was level my Spider-Verse to tier 10. I would not have done that, looking back. But at the time, I wanted a team that could beat Fury Shield, and I was like, okay, this is the team that's going to do it, other than Brotherhood. So I'm going to just pour it down a bunch of materials. And this is the one team I was leveling up one gear tier at a time, just try to get there. And when I got there, I found out, 1, they weren't that good at beating Fury Shield. They were okay at it. They could do it, but a lot of things had to go right. 2, they weren't meta, and they couldn't beat hardly anybody else, so it was just really frustrating. And I probably wouldn't have done it again. I kind of regret that's probably one of the things I spent a lot of resources on that I really wish I spent somewhere else, leveling some other team. It could have helped me put more resources into getting Ultron, for example. So because of that, I think this is a cautionary tale. Just make sure you be careful with your resources, man. Like, save your resources. Wait to spend them until you know you're going to spend them all at once. And I think that's a really good way to play the game and a really good attitude to take.